Aaron Thomas nodded. Well, Matt said, making a dramatically sad face. Her pa be sad at the field, sitting there, that he taken a big pointy stick and stabbed himself through the heart. That's what they all said anyways, he added, seeing the shocked look his story had produced. But he had a tyke. He had a little girl, Kira said, finding it unbelievable that a father would do such a thing. Matt shrugged again. He considered that. Maybe he didn't like her none, he suggested. Then after a moment he frowned and said, but how could he not like her none when she sings so good? And how did she get here? Thomas asked. What is she doing here? I've been told that they give her away to someone who had a craving for more tykes, Matt said. Kira nodded. Orphans always go to someone else. Unless, Thomas said slowly. Unless what? Kira and Matt said together. He pondered that. Unless they sing, he said at last. Jameson came into Kira's room as he always did, later in the day. Outside, the rain still fell. Matt under Matt, undaunted, had gone off with his dog to find his mates, wherever they may be in this such weather. Thomas had returned to his own quarters too, and Kira worked with extra lamps lighted by the tender that had settled her up to her task, stitching carefully throughout the afternoon. The interruption when Jameson knocked on her door was welcome. The tender brought tea, and they sat companionably together in the room while the rain spattered against the windows. As usual, he examined her work carefully. His face was the same creased, pleasant face she had known now for many weeks. His voice was courteous and friendly as together they scrutinized the folds of their outstretched robe. Yet the memory of the harsh sound of his murmured speech in the room below prevented Kira from asking him about the singing child. The work is very fine, Jameson told her. He leaned forward, looking carefully at the section she had been just completed, where she had meticulously matched the subtle differences of several yellows and filled in the background area with tiny knot stitches that formed a texture. Better than your mother's, although hers was excellent. She taught you the stitches. Kira nodded. Yes, most of them. She didn't tell him how others simply just come to her, untaught. It seemed boastful to speak of it. And Annabelle the dyes, she added. I'm using many of her threads still, but I'm beginning now to make my own when I'm at her cot. She knows all there is, the old woman said, Jameson said. He looked at Kira's leg with apparent concern. The walk isn't too hard for you. When the walk is the walk is not too hard for you? One day we'll have the fire pit and pots for you. I'm thinking of preparing a place just below. He gestured towards the window, indicating an area between the building and the edge of the woods beyond. No, I'm strong, but she hesitated. Yes? Sometimes I've been fearful on the path, Kira told him. The forest is so close all around. There's nothing to be afraid of there. I do fear beasts, she confessed. As you should. But stay on the path as always. The beast will not come near the path. His voice was reassuring, as it had been the day of her trial. I heard growling once, Kira confided, shuddering a little at the memory of it. There's nothing to fear if you don't stray. Annabelle said the same thing. She told me that there was nothing to fear. She speaks with four-syllable wisdom. But Jameson, for some reason, Kira hesitated to tell him this. Perhaps she didn't want to question the old woman's knowledge. But now, feeling reassured by Jameson's interest and concern, she told him the startling thing the old Dyer had said, with such certainty. She said that there are no beasts. He looked at Kira oddly. The expression on his face seemed a mixture of astonishment and anger. No beast? She said that? There be no beasts, Kira repeated. She said it in just a way several times. Jameson led the section of the robe that he had examined back down on the table. She's very old, he said firmly. It's dangerous for her to speak that way. Her mind is beginning to wander. Kira looked at him dubiously. For weeks now she had worked with the dyer. The list of plants, the many characteristics of each, and the details of dyeing procedures, such complex knowledge. All of it was clear and complete. Kira had seen no sign of, or no hint of a wandering mind. Might the old woman know something that no one else, even someone with the status of Jameson, knew? Have you seen beasts? Kira asked him, hesitantly. Many, many times. The woods are filled with them. Never stray past the village limits. Do not go beyond the path. Kira looked at him. His expression was hard to discern, but his voice was firm and certain. Don't forget, Kira, he continued. I saw your father taken by the beasts. It was a hideous thing. Terrible. Jameson sighed and patted her hand sympathetically. Then he turned to leave. You're doing a fine job, he said again, appreciatively. Thank you, Kira murmured. She put her hand, still feeling his touch, into her pocket. Her special scrap of cloth lay folded there. She felt no comfort from it. As the door closed behind Jameson, she stroked the cloth, seeking its solace, but it seemed to withdraw from her touch, almost as if it was trying to warn her of something. The rain still fell steadily. Through it, she thought for a moment that she could hear the child sob on the floor below. Chapter 14. The sun was shining in the morning, but Kira woke groggy after a fitful sleep. Following an early breakfast, she tied her sandals carefully, anticipating the walk to Annabel's. Maybe the clear, cooler air after the rain would wake her up a bit and make her feel better. Her head ached. Thomas's door was closed. He was probably still asleep. There were no sounds either from the floor below. Kira made her way out the doors, relishing the breeze that lingered after the storm, and the pine scented from the trees that was still glistening and wet. It blew her hair away from her face, and the misery of her sleepless night began to subside. Leaning on her stick, Kira made her way to the place where she ordinarily turned from the village and entered the woods on the path. It was quite near the weaving shed. Kira! A woman's voice called to her from the shed, and she saw that it was Marlena, already at the loom so early. Kira smiled and waved, detoured to greet the woman. We miss you. Them tykes that clean up for us now are worthless, horrid and lazy, and the ones stole my lunch yesterday. Marlena scowled her outrage. Her feet slowed on the treadle, and Kira knew that she was eager to chat and gossip. That be him now, the wicked tyke. As a familiar wet nose touched Kira's ankle, she reached down to scratch Branch and saw Matt grinning at her from behind the corner of the weaving shed. You there, Marlena called angrily, and he drew back to hide. Marlena, Kira asked, remembering that the weaving woman lived in the fen. Did you ever know a girl tyke named Joe? Joe? The woman was still peering towards the shed corner, hoping to catch a glimpse of Matt and scold him. You there, she called again, but Matt was too sly and too clever to respond. Yes, she used to sing. Ah, the singing tyke. Yes, I knowed her. Not her name, though, but her singing. We all knowed that. Like a bird it was. But under her. Marlena shrugged. Her feet began to move slowly again on the treadle. She be tooken off. They give her offs to somebody. I guess. She be girlfriend. I heard. She leaned forward and whispered loudly. Some say she received the songs by magic. No one teached her. The songs just come. Paused. She gestured to Kira to come closer. Furtively, Marlena confided. I heard that them songs were full of knowledge. She be the only a small tyke, you know. But when she singed, she had that knowledge of things that wasn't even happened yet. I never heard it myself, only heard tell of it. Marlena laughed, and her feet took up the rapid pace of the treadle that caused the rhythmic motion of the loom. Kira nodded goodbye to her and started toward the path. Matt met her there, appearing from behind a tree where he had been hiding. Kira glanced back, but Marlena was busy at the loom and had forgotten them both. Are you coming with me this morning? She asked Matt. I thought you found it boring at the dyer's hut. You mustn't go today, Matt said solemnly. Then he glanced at his dog and began to laugh. Looky, old Branch, him trying to catch him a lizzie. Kira looked and laughed too. Branch had been chasing a small lizard to the base of a tree and was watching it frustrated as it slithered up the tree trunk beyond his reach. He stood up on his hind legs and his front ones churned in the air. The lizard looked back and moist stiletto tongue darted in and out. Kira watched again for a moment, chuckling, then turned again to Matt. What do you mean I mustn't go? I missed yesterday because of the rain. She's expecting me. Matt looked solemn. She's not be expecting anybody. She be gone to the field right when the sun be coming up. Draggers tooken her. I seen it. To the field? What are you talking about, Matt? She couldn't possibly walk to the field from her cot. It's too far. She's too old. And she wouldn't want to do anyways. I didn't say she'd be wanting to. I said they tooken her. She'd be dead. Dead? Annabelle? How could that be? Kira was stunned. She had seen the old woman 2 days before. They had sipped tea together. Matt took her question seriously. I'd be like this, he replied. He flung himself to the ground, lay on his back, both arms outstretched, opened his eyes wide, and stared up blankly. Branch, curious, nosed at his neck. Matt held the pose. Stared in dismay at his grotesque but accurate imitation of death. Don't, Matt, she said at last. Get up. Don't do that. Matt sat up and took the dog in his lap. He tilted his head and looked at Kira curiously. Probably they be giving you her stuff, he announced. You certain it was Annabella? Matt nodded. I seen her face when they took her to the field. Briefly, he made the death face again with his blank eyes. Kira bit her lip. She turned away from the path. Matt was correct. She could not go into the woods now. But she did not know where to go. Wait, Thomas, she supposed. But for what? Thomas had never met the old dyer. Finally, she turned and looked back at the large council edifice where she lived. The door through which she came and went was in the side wing. The large door in the front of one side she had entered on the day before of her trial, so many weeks before. The Council of the Guardians was probably not meeting today in the big chamber where her trial had been, but Jameson must be someplace inside. She decided that she would look for him. He would know what had happened. He would tell her what to do. "No, Matt," she said, when the Tykes began to follow her. The Tyke began to follow her. His face fell. He had a sense of adventure. "Go wake Thomas," Kira told him. "Tell him what happened. Tell him that Annabella is dead, and that I have gone to find Jameson." "Jameson? Who is he?" Kira was startled at Matt's ignorance. Jameson had been so much a part of her life that she had forgotten the Tyke would not know his name. "He's the guardian who took me to my room," she explained. "Remember? A very tall man with dark hair. You were with us that day. He always wears one of Thomas's carvings," she added. "A quite nice one with the outline of a tree." Matt nodded at that. "I seen him," he said eagerly. "Where?" If Jameson was nearby, if she could find him at one of the workplaces, she went out to search the council edifice. "He be there, walking beside when the draggers took in the old dryer to the field." So Jameson already knew.